Mr. President, have you spoken to Senator Mitch McConnell since his hospitalization?
No,
How's he doing?
I have
Do you
no
have
idea.
any idea how he's doing?
I have no idea how he's doing.
Well, MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell has been on top of this story. Charlie is still with us. Michael, this is now bipartisan. Does that change things?
It could, Alicia. It could certainly put some pressure on his office to release more information or just simply say what brought him into the hospital and why he is still there right now. But up until this point, we have not gotten that kind of information. Where things stand right now are not very different from when I spoke to you yesterday, and it's because we still have not gotten any updates from Senator McConnell's office. What we do know is that Senate Majority Leader John Thune and the second highest ranking Senate Republican John Barrasso, they both said that they spoke with McConnell earlier this week. They had about 20-minute phone calls each. They spoke about a number of topics, but still no update on his condition. Yesterday, there was that letter from Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky asking McConnell's office for more information. And now, as you mentioned, we are hearing from some Republicans who say they really don't know what's going on with him, and there is some concern. You just spoke about Marlin Stutzman. I also want to show you some comments from Brett Guthrie. He is a Republican who represents part of Kentucky in the House of Representatives. He said he's texted with McConnell, but there's still some question about what that actually means. Take a listen.
This isn't a voice communication, and you haven't seen him.
Well, I haven't talked to him personally.
So how do you know that the texts themselves are actually coming from him?
Well, I don't. I've never known anybody to text for him when we text back and forth. So I just absolutely assumed it was from him. So I'm going to be fine. That's what I got back, the response. And I've talked to people on his staff, and I haven't directly talked to him, but I understood he talked to John Thune yesterday or the day before, my understanding, Barrasso and some others. I do believe he's going to recover, and I hope he's back in Washington soon. We need him back.
Now, Alicia, the fact that we are discussing and debating whether or not a text from somebody's phone number is actually a text from them, I think speaks volumes about the place we're in right now when it comes to Senator McConnell's condition. One more thing I'll leave you with. We've gotten the first indication of some questions, or some pressure, rather, for Senator McConnell to potentially step aside and resign. There's a new tweet out from Congresswoman Nancy Mace, the Republican from South Carolina. She writes on X, quote, "If McConnell is in as bad a shape as Biden ever was or worse, he needs to step aside. This charade can't continue. We can't demand of others what we won't demand of ourselves." So we are, Alicia, coming up on that 1 month mark since Mitch McConnell was brought to the hospital. Again, still no word on his condition and what brought him there in the first place, but certainly the bipartisan pressure for more information, very much so, rising right now.
Charlie, is it telling that the president didn't make it onto Mitch McConnell's call list?
Well, yes, obviously, Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump have not been on speaking terms, I think, for some time. But, I hate having to agree with Nancy Mace here, but if we're going to have a gerontocracy, I think the minimal standard should be a little bit of transparency. If we're going to have people who are in their 80s, who are in the presidency, in the Senate, or on the U.S. Supreme Court, I think the minimal thing that we could expect, the obligation, is to tell us whether they are still alive, what their condition is, whether they are ever going to come back and be able to do their duties. We've just seen so many of these, and quite frankly, cover-ups of the condition. And this notion that somehow someone got a text from Mitch McConnell's number so that we should take that seriously. No, I think that right now, given everything that we have gone through over the last few years, that the voters have every right to say, no, we want some proof of life. We want some actual information. And I think that that is a moral and political obligation of the offices, including of the office of the president, of Supreme Court justices, senators, and members of Congress, who, by the way, we've had a number of them just simply vanish from the face of the earth, and nobody knows where they are. Look, as long as they're working for the taxpayers and allegedly representing, the American public, we have the right to know, and I think the obligation to know, whether they are still compos mentis or around.
Well, Mike, I've got about 30 seconds left. I think that Charlie's point is especially true because this is about to affect the legislative process.
Yeah, that's right. Senator McConnell notably sits on the Senate Appropriations Committee, which is going to be very key as we get closer to that September 30th government funding deadline. There is a potential shutdown that could transpire. It's a conversation we have every single year up on Capitol Hill. If the Senate Appropriations Committee tries to advance any of those spending bills and they do fall along party lines, if McConnell isn't there to vote, it means that the committee would be deadlocked. And on Capitol Hill, a tie fails, which means that we are coming up to a point where McConnell's absence could be a real problem for Republicans, for the legislative process, for the funding of the government overall. So right now, it's sort of a question of, well, when will he come back? What's his condition? But we are getting closer to a point, Alicia, where it could be, well, actually, what can we do or not do if he's not here to actually cast a vote?